Amazing. So I guess we've discussed what it is. We've discussed some of the, I guess, typical signs and symptoms, while appreciating that that's a very, very long list. And you've sort of started to touch on some of the things that we can do to support lymphatic health. But is it possible just to expand on some of these things? If people are starting to suspect that maybe they've got some lymphatic issues, which they naturally will by now, what are some kind of go-to tools that people might be able to consider?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be small little action steps that can make a huge difference. So I mentioned before that we know that two things move lymphatics primarily, and one is movement. So it start to move more of yourself now than you normally do. Even just the very state of more steps in a day can move lymph. Walking is one of the best ways to move lymphatics, especially from the lower body up, from the calves and the ankles and the lower body up to the heart. And most people don't walk a lot these days, right? And then sometimes that's hard to do when you're not feeling well, right? But and then there's some other things that you can begin to do with that. One is move more of yourself, more often, more ways, more environments, just more than you do now. Begin to focus on breathing a little bit better, which means concentrating on breathing from your diaphragm, which is awareness of, am I breathing more from my belly region or my neck and chest? And most people are like, I don't know, I can't tell. And I just say, breathe more through your nose in and out than your mouth, and you're on a good start. Because breathing in and out through your nose puts more pressure into your body and moves your diaphragm a little bit more efficiently, so you'll move the lymph a little bit better like that. And then this is where people usually tell me something. They say, Doc, I breathe every day through my diaphragm and I move a lot, but I'm still got a problem. And I'm like, then I ask them a question. So what do you think that means? That means that you're too congested now. You're too stagnated, that doing those alone are not enough anymore. And that's where you need to do maybe sometimes a little bit more of an aggressive movement or manual massage, lymphatic releases of key areas in the body. One is the act of jumping up and down, like on the balls of your feet, like you're on a trampoline, because trampolining or jumping on the balls of your feet moves this body up and down, and fluids move, right? And it's a form of vibration, and it can unstuck areas that are stuck just because you're jumping up and down. And most humans don't jump up and down, right? And you should. And the other one is just you can do some dry brushing that you've seen sometimes where people brush their skin, and because most of the lymph is where? In the skin as well, right? And then I usually show people how to massage around the big joints of your body. So I'll be happy to show the 6 places that I recommend in a moment when I'm going through my list, if you want me to.
Amazing.
I'll show you those. But it's very interesting because you know that movement moves lymph, and Mother Nature is pretty smart. I told you that already. She puts a lot of these lymph node clusters, which are remember the nodes are stuff that kills things. She put clusters of them. You've got over 700 of them in your body, but she forms a lot into the big joints of your body that are supposed to move the most: your shoulders, your hips, your knees, your trunk, and your neck. Because the more you move those things, right, the more that you move lymph. That's what walking is, right? So I'll show you the 6 places on that one that you can do. Hydration is big. Most people don't drink enough water, but I usually will find people that are dehydrated or have poor lymphatics. They are very low on mineral content as well, because they've been under so much stress for so long that they don't have adequate mineral balance. So they don't absorb regular water well. So I have them drink water that has trace minerals in it or electrolytes in it. and it will be much more easy for your body to absorb that content. Because some of the times the reason that you have constipation or you have stagnant lymph is that you're just dehydrated, right? So you add some of the trace minerals or the electrolytes into your water, and then that can help. And watching your food intake. And I tell people, don't eat crap and eat good food. I don't need to give you a list because you already know what it is. Like, you just eat more fruits, vegetables, that have the phytonutrients in it, but you have a lot of water liquid content in fruits as well. So when you drink water, you can just put a slice of fruit in it or a vegetable in it, and that also helps you absorb the water, because the phytonutrients and the chemicals in the water help structure the water, so you absorb it much more efficiently. So you do that. So those are pretty big deals of fundamental, easy things that you do. And the 6 places that I have people massage the area is to reduce where you have a lot of this excess tension because you don't move a lot, and you release them in the exact order that I'm going to tell you to, and it'll help drain the lymph because it's just based on pressure. And I tell people, just think of a lot of water on the top of a mountain needs to flow to the bottom of the mountain, and then that's how we're going to do it this way. So what you do is you just take your hands and you can massage above the collarbone on both sides, right side and left side. So you take your fingers and you rub above the collarbone on both sides. And then I want you to put your fingers and rub a little bit below the collarbone on both sides. The point above and below the collarbone that's the big sticking point for most lymph. And if that's backed up, lymph won't work very well at all. So you do above the collarbone, below the collarbone with your fingertips for 5 to 10 seconds. It doesn't take a lot. Press in hard enough that you feel like you're getting a massage, but you're not hurting yourself. Then you go to the very top of your neck, right behind where your jaw sits, and you feel this big bone that's right where your ear is, and you just massage right at the top on both sides. That's number 2. Number 3 is right in the shoulder joint where your shoulder attaches to your chest muscle called your pec. So if I move my arm, that's the place where it moves. I do the left side, I do the right side. Then I want you to do the same thing from the belly button to the bottom of your sternum. So right around your abdomen a little bit. Then you go to the crease of your groin. So when you sit in a chair and you have that big crease, you massage right there. They get stuck. And then the other place is behind your knee, because when you sit, you flex your knee and then you choke fluid behind the knee. So then massage behind the knee, and you have to do it in that order. If you do it any other way, you can make yourself worse because you're not opening up these liquid channels the way that fluid wants to flow. And if you just do those places and then you jump up and down, you'll have even better results, right? It's just that simple. So for the people that get really tight or stiff at night, like we said before with the lymph, you can try that before you go to sleep and see how you feel. And then you can try it the next day when you wake up and see how you feel. One of the 2 ways you'll like better than the other, and you choose which one you like, the way it makes you feel best first, and it can make a big difference for you.
Amazing. And just to, I guess, expand on this, I'm not sure if I ever sent you my client's email, Perry, but I've had a few clients go through your online course, and I'm going to help you plug it here, the Lymphatic Mojo course. And I had a client, just to give you a little bit of context, he had mold toxicity, he had an old parasitic infection, he had toxicity from organophosphates as well. He did your course, and it was on the second day of him doing it where he had incredible vivid nightmares that night. He woke up absolutely sweating. His sheets were just completely soaked through. And he had, for I think 24, 48 hours, some real sort of emotional releases as well. But he does, and it sounds horrible, but the positive spin on this is for him, it was one of the most important parts of his 8-year healing journey. So he's a huge advocate of lymphatic work and the Lymphatic Mojo course. And I use him as like my, my golden star of someone who's done this and who's reaped the rewards.
Oh, that's really wonderful to hear. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it can be all of that for people. It can be very emotional when you begin to work those regions. And then when you start to unleash the obstruction or stagnation in the body and it begins to move, then you're going to start to release toxins that have been stuck for a while. And it's natural to feel kind of yucky for a little bit when that first happens, but that's actually a good thing in a way. And I've had it to where people say that they're actually blown away, honestly, because it seems so simple that all I got to do is rub these 6 places. How can that make such a big difference in anything? Because it doesn't seem logical. And I'm like, well, it's actually really logical once you understand physiology and exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it the way that you're doing it. But they usually say, if this was so simple and so great, why the hell am I just hearing about this now? Right? And then I say, I'm asking myself that question every single day because you should have been told this up to that point. And it doesn't have to be complicated to be effective either. And it can be really, really simple. But that's human nature. We tend to think that if it's not really complicated or intensive, that it's not as valuable. And I say it's completely the other way around, where the basics and the fundamentals, because that's how physiology works, is the more powerful thing too. Like, okay, well, it's pretty simple that you need oxygen, but if you don't get it, you're dead in a couple of minutes. So that's simple. That's not complicated. That's pretty big. So it's the same thing with all of these fundamental principles.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that story. That's really good. Really good.
Yeah, it's an incredible journey, but I 100% agree with what you're saying there, because you just have to think that the creator, whoever that is, wouldn't have given us a lymphatic system that we weren't able to support through natural means. You talk about walking being a really effective way of supporting the lymphatic system. Like, we need to go back to the way we're designed to live ultimately.
Isn't that crazy how it usually comes down to that, right? And just these fundamental and basics that we that we know we're supposed to do, but we either just don't do them because they're too simple. Or what I find actually happens a lot is that, one, people don't do them. But it's a very interesting journey I've had through learning is that even when all of those things are beneficial, that are simple, you got to be careful you don't do too much at one time. Because the body becomes very sensitive to stressors, even good stress. To itself, and it can overreact. That's what an autoimmune disease is, or allergies are just an overreaction to something. So you have to tiptoe in and go slow. So when I teach the lymphatics, there's different ways where you go in easier and then you work up to more intensive or longer durations or more places on the body. Because if you do too much too fast, it doesn't get you better faster. And it's the same thing with nutrition or exercise or walking. And plus, human nature is that if I give you 10 things to do, probably you won't do 10 of them. But if you do 10 of them, you only do it for 2 days because you get tired of doing them. So I'd rather say, here's a list of 10 things. Which one will you start with first? Which one do you want to do? Okay, that's the one we start with. And then that's where we go from. And then you build up from there. Does that make sense? And then whenever I work with the body and I'm doing an assessment, I assess all the systems of the body all the time, but I assess the lymphatics first. The lymphatics always come first. and I need to see just how involved they are. That comes from my assessment, that comes from my history, and then I'll determine what I need to do. That'll be using my first treatment as well. And the beautiful thing about my system is when I teach people how to assess the lymph nodes, the assessment is your first treatment. Because just by the nature of you pressing on these areas where you have the lymph nodes, I gave you a big list of them, but there's a lot more, is that when you press on them in the order that I'm telling you, you just flushed your lymphatics without even knowing it. And then that's why people say, first of all, I've never had anybody in my entire life assess that system or push on those places like you did in one session. And then they say, I can't believe how much of a difference that made me feel the following day just from that. And I'm like, that's just the power of physiology right there. That's all that is.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And a question that I'm itching to ask is, have you come across any information from a herbal perspective in ways of supporting lymph? Are there any herbs that you know of that can get involved here?
It can be. I don't do too much with supplementation because I've found this is that no two people will react to an herb the same way. So because that, you got to remember that the autoimmune system is an immune system reaction, right? And then one person's immune system is having a reaction, but it's not the same as another person's immune system. And some herbs can do well with one person, but not necessarily another one.
Right.
So I don't get too much into that, honestly. But when I do, it's on an individual basis.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's a little bit deeper rabbit hole to go into, because you can have a lymphatic system problem, but when somebody's been sick a long time, it's like, okay, well, how did the lymphatic system get to that point? And there's two different roads you can go down.
Sure.
But I just want people to know initially that you can still, no matter what road, still work on those 6 places and jump up and down and breathe and do all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Does that make sense with my answer?
Yeah,